Hey, if you're at that point in your DIY journey where you want to start installing T-track in a workbench to up your game, but you don't have a miter saw to cut the T-track, or you don't feel comfortable cutting aluminum on the miter saw, then I feel like I have the perfect solution for you. I decided to design a jig that allows you to put the T-track in there and cut it using a jigsaw rather than a miter saw, which hopefully is safer. So let's go ahead and get into it. Before we start making the jig, I just want to compare what it's like to be able to use T-track. So it has some great advantages. Here you can see I'm just putting a piece of plywood on the table. And here we're taking actual accessories for T-track. And what it allows us to do is it allows us to raise our piece off the table. So this is a good example how it comes in handy. And if I want to cut through this, I could. But also another great application is if I wanted to hold the piece down, I could take these clamps that I picked up and also use that and the T-track to hold down the piece. And then I could sand it so it almost acts as an extra set of hands. So what we're going to need for this build is we're going to need a few 2x4s. This is just going to be another scrap wood project. You could also use 4x4s, but for us, we're going to be taking 2x4s and stacking them up on top of each other. And we're also going to be taking this piece of scrap plywood and using that as well. So the first thing we want to do is cut our 2x4s down to size, and we're going to be using a circular saw for that. And one of the things that we want to do is make sure that they're all the same size. So we're going to be using our plywood as a guide, a template. And we're going to be marking that so we know exactly how long it needs to be. And we want it to be flush with the other side of the piece of plywood. Then we're going to take that piece of 2x4 and we're going to take our square, and then we're just going to mark it so that we ensure a nice straight line. And then we're going to use that for our other piece as well. Then we're going to be taking our circular saw and we're going to be using the square as our guide. So we're going to use a clamp to hold it just because I don't like to put my hand there. And then we're going to be pushing along with the circular saw in order to make our cut. Now that that's done, we could take off our square and then take off our clamp. Now you can see here that we have a nice clean cut for this first 2x4. So we're going to repeat the process. We're going to grab our other 2x4 and we're going to put the clamp down and then cut it with the circular saw. And then you can see here when we put them side by side, they're the exact same length, which is what we wanted. So now we're going to push that off to the side. And then we're going to grab the other piece and then mark so that we can cut that 2x4 in half. So in total, we should have 4 pieces when we're done. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to be stacking them on top of each other like that. And that's just so that when we use our jigsaw, we could raise it off the table. Now we're going to be grabbing our drill and we're going to be drilling into the first piece because we want to make sure that we clamp these things down, and we're going to be doing that using screws. Then we're going to turn it over and then we're going to drill our second pilot hole with our countersink, and then we're going to put in our second screw. So 2 screws is all you need for this. Anything more and it'd probably be a little bit too much. Then we're going to grab the other side and repeat that process as well by drilling and then our countersink and then our screw. So now that we have those 2, they're both fastened together. And then we're going to take our plywood piece and line it up and see if we have enough space, and we do. And then we're going to be marking for our T-track. And then also using our square so that we can get a nice line, because we're going to be using this as our guide for when we cut our T-track. So now we're going to remove our top from our base and we're going to be putting it back on the table. We're going to put those to the side, and then we're going to be grabbing our plunge router so that we can make our dado cut. So one of the good things that I like about using this router is it's actually a lot more heavy duty than a trim router, so it can make the cut. So we're just going to be lining up the piece that we're going to be using as a fence. I actually opted to not use this piece as a fence because I found that my fingers were getting close to it, and you'll see that later. But here we're just going to be marking the line that we need, and then we're going to clamp it down. And then once we clamp that down, you could see right here, I'm doing a test run and my fingers get really close to the clamp, which I didn't like. So I ended up switching out the piece. So it's good advice to make sure that you do a test run before you turn on the router. So here I just grabbed a spare piece of walnut that I have for an upcoming project where I build an entryway table. And what this allows is for the clamp to be further away from the cut that we're about to make. And then now my hands are able to go through with no problem. And then what I want to do is use dust collection as well so that we can minimize the dust in the air. So you want to go through this in multiple passes. I did 4 passes to get to the 3/8 depth for the T-track. And now we're just fitting our T-track to make sure that it's flush to the surface, and that works. So now we can take off our piece of walnut and then go ahead and bring our plywood top back over to the base. And then here we're just going to be marking to make sure that we don't hit that 2x4 when we go to cut with our jigsaw. And here we're going to be using this jigsaw for our jig, which we're going to be using to cut the T-track. And here we're just lining it up in the middle. Then we're going to be taking this piece of walnut, which we're going to use as a fence. And now we're just going to mark it with a square so that it's straight. Then we're going to be drilling the plywood tabletop to the base itself. So same thing, we want to go through and use our drill or countersink. And that almost got away from me there, but it's okay because I have the other side bolted down now. And then now that we have the screw in place, we're also going to be putting in the other screws. So 4 screws to hold the tabletop to the base. And then now we're going to take that square and just verify again that it's 90 degrees to the dado that we cut for the T-track. And then here we're going to be attaching the fence to the tabletop. And now we're going to be using these screws so that we can have the toggle clamp, which we're going to use to hold the T-track. This is just so that the T-track doesn't slide around. Even without the toggle clamp, it still feels secure, but this is just added protection to make sure that doesn't move as you're cutting it with the jigsaw. So we want to drill holes for that as well. And we're going to be using all 4 screws for the toggle clamp. And this can hold up to about 500 pounds. And what you really need for this T-track is just a few pounds. And here we're just testing it out. They're also adjustable, so you can move that back and forth. Now for cutting T-track, I recommend these metal saw blades that I picked up from Home Depot, which are going to be better for cutting T-track than any other type of blade. So you want to make sure that if you are cutting, you do that as well. And then here we're going to be doing our 0 insert cut so that we can cut our T-track appropriately. So here is a test demonstration. We're going to put in our T-track. We're going to push down on the toggle clamp, and then we're going to be cutting it with a jigsaw right here. And you could see it cut through really easily. I didn't have to worry so much about kickback. And here's a closer look. And you could see that it cut that piece well. Now you can cut longer pieces, but T-track is expensive and this is just a demo. So I didn't want to use a bunch of T-track. We don't have it like that. So here you also want to file it down to make sure that doesn't cut you, and that's how you make a jig. So hopefully you feel a little bit more safe cutting T-track like this. Let me know what you think down in the comments if you would use something like this as opposed to the miter saw. Also, don't forget there will be build plans for this fixture, and if you want to go ahead and cop those, you can. If you guys want to see me use this fixture and install T-track all over a great workbench, go ahead and click the video in the top right. And as always, I'm Neil, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.